So this episode is going to be difficult to talk about in terms of not hitting some weird algorithm that blocks our video, because the content in it is pretty extreme, and I don't know how to word some of these things without saying them. So I mean, tentacle stuff.
Well, Eldrick love scene.
There you go. Yes.
I would say more anime than Eldrick, but
both. I mean, this is an episode I think people are going to be talking about because of that one singular scene. It's definitely going to cause a lot of conversations. Very graphic.
At the water cooler.
Yeah, water cooler.
At work. Did you see?
Yeah. It's like, yes, Ted, we all saw it. This is like the 10th person you've asked at the water cooler, please.
So yeah, that scene. What did y'all think? Let's start this thing right. Let's go right into it. What did you think?
Well, it caught me by surprise. If we're talking about the initial scene, because I kind of thought she would be a person when we started this episode. From minute one of this episode, I thought she was a human being, and then that scene happens. I just thought it was the usual pressure from a parent to, find somebody suitable and, gain stability for the family.
That was the beauty of it. It was a good build, and then bam. The moment she lit the candle and they all lit, I was like, uh-oh. I knew something was coming, but I didn't know what.
Something was off, but I thought it was like witchcraft or something.
I thought it was very well done, because in a preview, we're thinking spider or something else. And then when all of that happened, I had no idea what it was going to be. I had zero clue. So until later in the episode, they mentioned it. I'm like Googling stuff, trying to figure out what the hell it was. And then finally, when they gave a name to it, I looked it up and was like, oh, damn. It went all anime on us instead of Lovecraftian, but I'm sure that this
that still felt more Lovecraftian to me, with the fact that the tendrils had mouths and everything, and
the way it happened was much more Lovecraftian than anime. But I don't know that there's not some crossover there. But I liked how they did it. It was very over the top, but it was very well done. And as the episode progressed, we found out more and more about what it actually meant for that to happen.
Yeah, they pulled no punches with the way they shot that. This is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and we're talking Lovecraft Country, episode 6. This was the first episode that critics hadn't got the screener for, so I guess everybody had a nice surprise tonight with the events that took place. I also want to say there was a major announcement in the last week or two. I don't remember if it was 2 weeks ago, but Jonathan Majors, the actor that plays Atticus, is going to play Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. So that's
really
good. Yeah, that's awesome for him. He's going to be in the Ant-Man movie, and hopefully that part continues for the franchise and he makes a bunch of money. So awesome for him.
We were talking about the HBO, or Marvel mining HBO, because Alice is from Perry Mason. We watched that show too, and she's She-Hulk.
Yeah, she'll be playing She-Hulk, correct? Yeah. So the talent. They're looking for talent now, and names that aren't as mainstream, and those are two great choices. Really talented, and not as mainstream. So we get the story of. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as built as he is, he could play Red Hulk instead of playing Kang. Kang's. I don't associate Kang with athleticism or anything, but I would say you will now when he's just throwing around Captain America.
Going back to the scene we were discussing at the opening, there's a character, Gia, who she lives with her mother, and it appears, like you said, Larry, that she's trying to find a husband, but we learned that's not the case. She's essentially sacrificing men, taking in their souls, and we get a whole backstory that explains that the mother had a daughter, had a husband. The husband was in a very twisted, messed up sexual relationship with the daughter, She wanted revenge, so she went to a shaman. The shaman, I guess, put it within the daughter, put this thing in her, so that next time that the father messed her, it
Took
would kill him.
advantage of
But
the
now
yeah.
she needs to kill 99 more men to collect their souls, so that they tell us, so that she could become human. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's the backstory of the character. Did I miss anything? And what did y'all think of that whole story as it played out?
Well, I did research on this. It's Kumijho. I'm not sure. It's like I'm not even going to attempt it, but it's
It's like
we talked.
Kumiko,
Yeah,
or Miho, or something like that.
but we talked about anime. It's the Nine Tails, and we laughed about Naruto and those kind of things. But I looked it up, and there's a huge difference between the Korean, Japanese, and Chinese when it comes to that particular like spirit, which was um, they talked about too at the very beginning when uh, Gia was talking to one of the other doctors, or when she was on that speed dating thing. And they were talking about how the Japanese basically stripped them of all their culture. So it was kind of cool to see that this goes across all cultures. But their Nine Tails is not like nice or kind of neutral. It is super evil. So I was like, oh shit.
Uh, yeah, Larry, anything on that?
Oh yeah. Just that lore. It was interesting. Personally, I don't see it as a nine-tailed fox. Oh, I mean, I guess that's how they explain it. But when they, well, just skipping ahead a little bit, when they had the scene at the end with the fox, and it's looking at her and she's looking back, and I guess we're supposed to make the connection. And it's like, oh, they're kind of the same thing. To me, I'm like, not really, because when I think fox, I don't think like a bunch of tendrils coming out of a person. I'm like, there's no way that's the same creature. That may be how they explain it culturally, but that's clearly something eldritch. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
uh,
I'm not
well, yeah, and I
disagreeing
get
that
that's
it's
what
not
you're saying.
otherworldly. They said that the Korean version of the Nine Tails or whatever,
Is always ominous.
it's bad. It like lives on livers and stuff. So when it was, you know, tearing apart that first guy, it lives on hearts and livers. I was like, oh shit.
Huh.
So and the whole memory thing was true. Like that's it
Oh,
didn't
so
say anything about eyes. I didn't see anything about eyes when I was reading about it, but it did say about like hearts and livers, because the hearts of people, it learns what you really feel. And I was like, oh damn. But they showed it going through the eyes, but it mentioned the heart for the same reason.
And I would say anyone who's listening to this podcast who knows anything about this, and wants to say something in the comments if we're wrong about something, or you have a different take on it, feel free. This episode, more than any other, I think there's a lot of just things I don't know about the culture, and even those who read the book. Is this happen in the book? Is this character even in the book? And I am curious about that.
well, I would say her condition definitely clears up some things, especially towards the end. Well, about a previous episode, because I was wondering when he finally spoke about his experiences in Korea and the woman he was with. And he was asked like, "Well, did you love her?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think so, but it ended weird." I was like, "Okay, yeah, this makes sense."
Yeah,
I
it
just
did
thought
end
it
a
was
little
like an
weird.
awkward breakup of some kind, but yeah.
He got
So
levitated by some.
yeah. So speaking of Atticus, we're introduced in this episode as a cold-blooded killer,
Yeah.
killing civilians. Even later in the episode, when we get the flashes of his life, we see him involved in torture. He was in. We knew he was involved in some bad things. I didn't realize it was to that extent. He tries to justify it. They were communists. Uh, well, were you shocked by that revelation?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because he was pulling teeth and stuff. I just kind of thought he he shot some people, but apparently he tortured as well. Is the thing, which is a whole nother level. I think they were trying to show that even we, the audience, were underestimating what Atticus did.
I I wasn't I wasn't as surprised when they showed all that stuff, just because he talked about he found how dark he could be while he was there. So when she saw all the flashes of horrible things he did, we weren't seeing that on screen. We were seeing, their basically their love forming, like their relationship and how much he loved her. So I'm like, well, what happened then? Because he mentioned it several times throughout the season so far about how horrible of a person he was and how he was just like his dad and like all these things while he was in Korea. He found that dark place. And I was just like, I'm not seeing any of this dark place. I mean, we
What?
saw him shoot those people at the very beginning, but I was like, I mean, yeah, that was fucked up. Like, I'm not trying to dismiss that, but I was feeling like there was something else on top of that that would mean that, that dark place he was finding.
Well, yeah, and but I thought it was more aligned with what we saw Montrose did, where Montrose slices a person's throat without hesitation to keep a secret. I thought it was more like that. I didn't think he was outright torturing people or anything. You
Well,
know,
and we've
Or
talked about it
executing
before.
civilians.
yeah.
And I think that just like a lot of people who follow orders and then go back and be like, well, I was just following orders, they get convinced that they're doing the right thing. They get convinced that they're doing this for the greater good, no matter how fucked up it is and how wrong it looks like to you. Some people do that. They just fold in like, well, I was just following orders, to kind of negate their own guilt of doing something awful. But at the end of the day, I think that's his issue, is he felt like, well, I was just following orders. But he was, when they showed him pulling teeth, he wasn't like grimacing or nothing. He was almost
He
like
was
smiling.
coldly doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
the look
figured.
on his face when he pulls that trigger, there is no hesitation. There is no. He's looking. Matter of fact, he looks at it like it's an inconvenience. That, okay, I gotta come over here and do this. The way he played that scene was a little surprising to me for the character, because I was like, wow, there was like no compassion behind the act.
Well, yeah, and I thought it was going to be more of a thing of when we finally got an explanation that it would be Atticus saying, "Well, I did that because I knew I would do it quick, and if it was one of the other people, they would have done it slow and they would have tried to get information out of her." But it turns out, especially when we see the flashback, it's more implied that he just went about his job very coldly and he just didn't care.
Yeah, and that's the part that surprised me. The fact that, because he's mentioned, finding that monster in Korea. However, I figured he was going to have some kind of remorse or some kind of,
Yeah.
guilt, but he seemed to have very little. Like you said, he just walked up and shot him and then just walked away. And then it showed in that flashback him pulling the teeth, and it, like, nothing bothered him. It would have been much different for me as a viewer to see him like struggle to do those things. I would have been like, oh damn. But he didn't give, like you said, he didn't give two shits. He was just like, well, doing my job. I'm like, that was, it was it was crazy
Well,
to see that side of him.
which begs the question: is this the type of person that all the damage that his father inflicted caused him to be? That when he got to war and when it was down to the situation, he was being told to do these things, because Montrose was such a shitty father and so abusive in his own right. He just didn't have any emotions towards inflicting the same kind of torture on someone else. And even worse, because that's just kind of because Montrose treatment just kind of shaped how he saw the world.
Well, I think he went to when he talked about going to a dark place, I think that when that kind of stuff happens to people, they're almost able to shut off themselves from emotion. It's like they basically shut it off so that they don't feel pain, they don't feel guilt, or they don't feel anger or hurt or sadness. Or so when he does all those things, it kind of showed that to me, because it wasn't like he was getting pleasure from it. He wasn't, torturing them and like ha ha ha. He was
Right.
just like stone faced. He didn't care. Like
It was more of a I'm going to get this over with, because he.
And even when he was torturing the girl, it wasn't like a smile. It was almost, but it wasn't a grimace. It was almost like a strain, like he was trying to hold it together. But he never, like it never bothered him. So people who go through trauma like that literally just are able to shut that kind of shit off.
Right.
Unless I missed something, all the music choices in this episode were of the time. Mostly a lot of Judy Garland stuff. For instance, did y'all catch any modern tunes? I didn't.
So you didn't catch that Kendrick Lamar?
Was there?
No.
So we've talked about the music in almost every one of these. I want to talk about it in this one briefly. They, like I said, it focused specifically on Judy Garland because Gio was a fan of the musicals, and it was something that she loved. There's a cool little musical number at the beginning where she walks down the theater and she's daydreaming about singing the song. Atticus uses a Judy Garland film for their first date, basically. So it's used throughout the entire episode, specifically Judy Garland's music from her musicals. What did y'all think about that choice? And just the music in general in this episode, including just how it was used across the board, even the singer at the bar. Like, what was your feelings on the music?
I liked it, not just because I'm very show tuney and I like musicals and stuff, but I thought it was cool that not only did they keep it more in the time frame, it showed the I don't know, the expansive of even American cinema at that time. Like you look at how much of an effect and how much of an influence, movies that they were producing at that time were going to other countries. Because she even was speaking English. Now, come to find out, I don't know if that's because she absorbed an American at a different time or something, and she was able to kind of, because of her ability, if she was able to speak English as well because of that, or if she learned it because of the movies. She watched.
I assumed it could be both. Yeah, I was trying to think that too. It could either be the absorption or straight up because she watches a bunch of films. Yeah,
that's a good point. I didn't even think that she might learn English by absorbing someone who speaks English.
It's like Highlander.
Yeah,
take their soul. You take everything.
Like a gross, messed up Highlander. Yeah,
if that was the way, there could be only one.
Oh God, yeah.
It'd be a much more interesting show.
Hey, bite your tongue.
Yeah, Highlander's amazing. Original series.
I don't know. I mean, it would have been better if they were like, I'm gonna fuck you and kill you and take your soul. And it's just them trying to.
Well, the last season got weird with like the devil and demons and shit. But all right, moving off Highlander. The music.
Well, I feel the music did a good job of setting the tone and putting you in the moment. And in fact, when the time came for that tonal shift, making you feel the contrast, because you're hearing all these Judy Garland songs and she's seeing movies and she's going through her training and everything and talking to her friends and trying to meet guys, and then we find out there's that twist of that, but we still have her going about her day to day, and it still very much feels like a slice of life story outside of that until the tanks roll in.
Well, I also think that there were several scenes that kind of tied into the movie-esque theme. When they were sitting down and watching the Judy Garland movie, I thought that felt like a movie of that time where people would sit down and watch those kind of movies. Also, the scene where they were in the winter, they were, throwing snow at each other and stuff. That felt like a scene from a 50s movie.
Right.
So there's a couple scenes that the way they were shot reminded me more cinematically of
I was thinking
one of those
too.
older movies. I
thought it reminded me of
it very, very much feels of its time.
Yeah, I think that was absolutely on purpose.
And so do I. And I think it was brilliant.
the gateway to their relationship, and we'll talk about their actual relationship here in a sec, but I want to talk about the thing that sort of got it going was the Count of Monte Cristo. And Spencer, I know you're a huge fan. You've read it.
Yep.
There was a period I
Actually
remember
own
you
a
were.
copy.
Yes, you're a big fan of it, and I don't know, Larry, if you've read it. I have not. I am familiar with the story though, and I've seen a few of the films.
I've seen the
But
films.
what did you think about that story? How it was used, the idea of revenge, and why Montrose would have loved the story, even about the author. Just what was your thoughts on that particular book being used to sort of create that bond, and even the idea that something like a book or a story or a piece of entertainment can be used to create a relationship. I mean, I think all of us have met someone and we bonded over a film or something like that.
Right.
And so yeah, just your thoughts on that.
Wait,
Go ahead, Larry.
yeah. I feel it was a good hook, because she's a film buff and he's very much into reading, and it was a book that he read that happened to be associated with a movie she watched, and at a moment where she was very coldly trying to kill him, it set a scene where she had no choice but to see him as human. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the books has played a pretty big role throughout the series so far. That
Correct.
and what that and Dracula, so there's some.
Yes. They both been referenced many times since the beginning of the show.
Yeah, I thought it was cool too that that's not the first book that was made into a movie, but this show is basically based off of a book. So to even reference that, she saw a movie that was based off of a book and it was different. That I loved that kind of little reference because
I didn't even catch
so
that. That's a great catch. Yeah, the fact that this is a show based off a book and the show is different than the book. Yeah, great catch, man.
Because they say, she's talking about how, the relationship and he gets back with Mercedes and all this stuff. He said, well, that's not how it ends.
Yeah.
She was like, what? He's like, no, that's not how it ends. Now you have to read it. And that's not how it ends. So I thought it was cool that they actually didn't just, they've done their research. And that's why shows on HBO, I always give them a giant, high five, with the exception of like the last season and a half of Game of Thrones. Well, they ran out of source material, but they do such a good job with the acting and the source material and stuff like that I felt, their research that they did, instead of just having her quote a movie and that being it, his love of books, he felt the need to be like, no, you have to read it now. It's different. And I love the fact that they did that. It was, I've read it and I also had it on audio, like audiobooks. It is the longest fucking audiobook, but it is, I think it's like 1,500 pages or something like that. It is super long, like super long, but it's a great, revenge story, which is kind of some of the themes in a lot of these episodes so far. So I think that's a reason that a lot of it keeps getting brought up, but I did love a lot of the little nods in this one. Like I said, the movie being different from the book and things like that. There's a lot of little things that, I tip my hats to HBO's and this show particular, their showrunners.
Yeah, which that was something I was going to bring up too. Is this the amount of times that this book is showing up and that Atticus is, just constantly reading it? Is this ultimately a revenge story? Is what I'm wondering. Is that what's being foreshadowed? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, Montrose is dead. I don't know.
The love, because of the adult scenes, we'll say, I think that's going to overshadow the real great thing about this episode, and that is the relationship between Atticus and Gia. There's a scene. I mean, all of their scenes together are so damn well done. These two actors have great chemistry, and then you get to the scene where they're professing their love for each other, basically, and she's telling you killed my friend, and the idea of we've done monstrous things, but that doesn't make us monsters. That whole scene, to me, that's one of the best scenes in the whole series thus far. And right. I was so invested in their relationship, And I've been saying on here for weeks, how much I love Letty and Atticus's relationship. But my God, they
You
this
kind of
is
want to see him with Gia
I
now.
want to say, yeah, this is a love triangle, and I've shifted sides. I'm like, whoa, no,
Yeah, my loyalties have gone elsewhere.
I know, and it's tough to say that because I think they've done such a good job with the other story. Yeah, the writers of this
Well,
Misha Green, running this thing, definitely is really good with writing love, and so yeah, what do y'all think about that relationship?
it seems like a more mature relationship than what Atticus and Letty have, because Atticus and Letty's relationship is based off of an old grade school crush, and you know, Atticus and Gia, they've spent a lot of time together. They've kind of built this relationship. They she in fact has gone from seemingly at the time not even viewing him as human because she was initially trying to kill him, to figuring him out, falling in love with him, and it's a serious. I mean, they have some serious issues that they overcame for this love to happen, and not only that, it's just I didn't expect it to happen. For one, I didn't expect her to actually even like him. I thought it would end with Atticus, uh, maybe loving her, but her not really loving him. Maybe it was a ruse the whole time, but they managed to weave in her falling for him in a way that was believable, and as you
If
mentioned earlier, made you root for them as a couple.
I was going to write a story about two characters that were quote unquote soulmates, this is how I would write it. Like the way these two characters interact and their relationship, you feel that they are meant to be, and they should be together. So yeah, it's very well
Well,
done.
and I think too that when we talk about
Like the
Letty and what, just like the Notebook,
just like the
this
Notebook.
that's what this is going to end like. It's going to be
Oh.
Gia and Atticus. Like Atticus is going to be reading to Gia. Remember when?
Oh, I
But
thought
they,
I thought you were going to mention that one scene. I thought Letty was going to finally snap at him and just kind of go, "Well, what do you want, huh? What do you want?"
but I think that when Atticus in a previous episode was super jealous of Letty dancing with the dude, that seemed very, like you said, Larry, grade school. It
Yeah,
was very immature, and everything that Atticus and Gia overcame to be together seemed much more mature, much more like developed. They took more time before they actually, fell in love with each other, as opposed to, like you said, it's more of a, I don't know, it seems very
there was a
childish in high school with Letty and Atticus. So,
yeah, there was more of a build instead of hey, we had a thing for each other since grade school. Let's give this a go.
Yeah.
You know,
She was going to kill him because he executed her friend in front of her. Like her, or started executing, her coworkers and everything. Like it's like the way this story was told over the course of 1 hour.
it's such a big
Wow.
shift, and like I said, they make you still root for them, and that's what's incredible. And so after all that happening, and then still bringing them to a place where you want this relationship to happen, how can you not root for those two to be together? And I guess it shows how good they wrote that, how well that was written. That this is what, episode 6, meaning you've had 5 episodes of Letty and Atticus, and yet you still want Gia and Atticus.
yeah, after
That's a
one
great
episode.
point. Yeah.
Well, I think too and we talked in one of the comments. I think it was the Richard Cheney talked about. You know, me and him were talking about Michael K. Williams, and we talked about Michael K. Williams, but and how great of an actor he is. But to me, this
Oh
shows how
boy.
great of an actor Atticus is because
Oh yeah, Jonathan Majors.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it
I've never
shows.
seen this dude before, but yeah, this dude,
But that's
he's
what I'm
got.
saying is
Yeah,
that
he's gonna be a
he
big
is
actor, I think.
he is not a great person, but you're still rooting for him. Just kind of like Montrose, there's parts of it where you're just like, he is a complete piece of shit. But Michael K. Williams does such a good job to where you almost feel empathetic. You
Yeah,
feel sympathy for him, and you're just like, damn it, I shouldn't feel sympathetic for this asshole, but you do because they're not only is it so well written, it's so well acted between Jonathan Majors and I mean everybody's in it is doing a great job. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, but Michael K.
absolutely.
Williams and Jonathan Majors, Atticus and Montrose are knocking it out of the park like every fucking episode.
when they, we end up in the scene where Gia and Atticus are, hooking up again, and it goes too far, and she start her thing, tentacles, tails, whatever you want to call them, come out, and she goes into his memories. And what's really interesting is we find out that it's not only his past, but she gets a glimpse of his future because she doesn't kill
Yeah.
him there. She throws him. And so he freaks out, obviously. He's trying to figure out what happened. She's warning him, don't go home. You're going to die. She's seen his future.
So
That's
now,
reflects back to last week's episode.
well, I was just saying, so now we know what those phone calls were about, that Atticus isn't hallucinating or anything. Because I think our assumption was, especially with the, what was it, episode 2 with the magic where he's fighting Gia and everything. Yeah, we assumed that at war Atticus killed her and he's hallucinating. But
that's
now
what
we know
I
this.
assumed. Yes, correct.
Now we know that she's still alive, that she's trying to warn him and trying to stop him from dying because she foresaw it, and we have a lot of context as to what was happening.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if she was still even alive until this episode. And I was like, oh shit, he's not talking to a ghost or something.
Yeah, I thought he was talking to a ghost, or there was a possibility that Atticus was going mad because he's reading Eldrick's script or something.
I thought he had fallen in love with a soldier that he had to kill.
Yeah, that was my assumption.
Yeah. The ending is, he obviously leaves. It's a very wild moment. And then she still refuses to take the 100th soul. Her and I will say it's her mother, might as well, go back to the shaman. And, the shaman gives her some cryptic shit about, you'll see more death. And where do you think, so this character's still alive, that shaman's around. This story, will she pop up in Chicago? Will she pop up in the next, handful of episodes? Where do you think Gia's story goes?
I think she will.
I think that as well. If she's not bound to that portion of Korea for some reason, given the type of creature she is, I think we'll see her in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that her being a part of this, to me, there was no other reason to show an entire, and I was wrong, because last week, I figured they would kind of bounce and show multiple storylines.
Yeah,
we just kind of focus on this, but I was off, obviously, and I wasn't mad that I was off. I enjoyed it. So, but I think that them showing her whole backstory, them showing how much they fell in love with each other, them showing in previous episodes that he's still calling her and trying to talk to her. There's no other reason to show all that unless she's either going to come back and tell him what happened, so that he can avoid it, or she's going to try and save him or something. There's no reason to go through all that and not have her be in any more episodes. So I think that she will be there.
Yeah, I think she's a part of the show now, that she's going to show, if not this season, she'll show up next season. But, my guess is that he's dialing Korea, so I don't know if it'll be this season, maybe next season.
Well, she only answered the first time. The second time, she didn't say anything. He kept trying to talk to her, and nothing happened.
Well, he talked to her in this last episode, if I'm correct.
She said, "Do you believe me now?" or something like that, because he translated the inscription that said "die," and he started freaking out. Although I'll say this about Atticus: the second the first episode happened, I would have already been like, "All right." Which, to his credit, he has been calling her, so he's definitely been questioning things. But clearly, something was going on there.
Yeah, he just doesn't know how to react to it yet.
It's a long flight to Chicago to Korea. Might take her a couple days to get there. It's a 14-hour flight. It's a long ass flight.
This review is a little shorter than typical, mostly because, as you said, Spencer, there was just one plot. There was no separate plots running. Anything else y'all want to say before we wrap this up?
Well, did you both watch the preview for next episode? There's
did.
A lot to say about that, I think. Well, given that Hippolyta seems to
be taking a trip through time.
Yeah, exactly. At least seems to be pulling a Doctor Who here.
Either physically or memory-wise, yes, absolutely.
Like she's actively using the orrery.
Yeah, I don't know how that's happening. I'm interested to find out. I think, without saying anything else about that, because I really thought it was a cool like tidbit about what could happen. I really have no idea how they're going to do it or how it's going to play out or what, because they said something about like her, like what if she finds out, what we did, and then it shows her, like they were like we have to stop her, and then of course she's bouncing around. So I don't know how that's going to play out.
I think you, Larry, said it a couple of weeks back. It's funny, especially her, how every character has like a piece of this puzzle, and like and
but
if
they won't communicate,
if they would all talk to each other, they would solve everything. Like and
it would already be solved.
Yes, and she clearly has a huge piece of it.
But this episode, we've talked about. I loved the the episode 4. I think, yeah, the one that had the whole Goonies vibe to it. But this one, as far like that one was my favorite episode, just like the effects and everything. But this one, storytelling wise, I think was the best acted episode, and it was emotionally, it was the most impactful episode. I really enjoyed this episode a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't, it's funny. Yeah, I think there are things in this episode. Yeah, this episode was very cinematic in many ways, the way it was shot. Yeah, it was really good. I've loved every episode, that's something,
And once again, just like all the previous episodes, you're getting a completely different feeling from this episode than you did from the rest. It feels like a completely different genre, and yet it still works.
It's funny because I've loved every episode for different reasons. So it's hard for me to say which one's my favorite at this point. But I love them all so far, but for all vastly different reasons.
Yeah, and I love nerding out a little bit about certain things, like the fact the show throws in a lot of references to old books and different things like that, and I hopefully people that are watching the show who haven't explored some of that stuff will go out and check it out, because I know Spencer's going to run out and watch every Judy Garland musical.
He's going to come back with some new theories after watching those Judy Garland films.
I've seen a few too. My mom's a big fan.
Yeah, so's mine. I've seen a lot of them.
So,
and a lot of them are on HBO actually, because
are they
TCM, the Turner Classic Movies or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Turner Movie Classics, whichever one it is. I don't TMC. There's a bunch of them on there on the HBO Max. There's a bunch of them.
And if I'm sorry. If anybody would like to hear our review for Hamilton, it's on the channel. It's still up. Go check it out. It is a musical review that we did.
I was just saying, one more major question. Do either of you think that this season or this series will actually end with Atticus dying in some way?
Yes, but death in this kind of genre doesn't mean permanent death. So yeah.
Well, I'm still curious if George is going to end up coming back. Like, I'm not thinking he is at this point, like I was initially, but I don't know. Hey, like you said, death really doesn't feel like it's permanent at this point. And with Christina knowing the immortal stuff, like there's several different spell type things.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you one area where you might be right there, that there may be something to that with George. The fact that Hippolyta is messing around with the time machine.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty good chance we'll see George again. Because with her husband being dead and everything, and with her having and of course that's reasonable, but her having such a hard time getting over that, there's no way if she has access to a time machine and she learns how to properly use it, she's not going to visit a period where George is alive and well.
Do you think this is... I was thinking about a second season. Obviously this is based off of a book, but I know they've already deviated from the book. Do you think they were thinking about doing this as multi seasons, or was it set as one season, sort of like what Watchmen did, where they like, we're just doing one and done? Do you want more seasons, even if there is no source material to pull from? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that I think it's an easy way to set up for multiple seasons. I think as as long as, to me, the source material is irrelevant. It's a very good thing to pull from, but they've set it up to where you could go way past whatever the source material is. Whether it's using the same actors, using something else, going to maybe a different lodge, because they did mention what, 34, I think. That there's,
Something.
Yeah.
yeah, so there's like 34 lodges. So if there's an issue where they're at right now, then there could be an issue in Vancouver Lodge, or Boise, Idaho Lodge. I don't. There's a lot of them all over the place. So if by the end of this, if it didn't get picked up for another season, they could just end it. Or by the end of it, if they knew it was, season 2's coming out next year, they could just be like, well, we're missing one page
I,
and we have to go here to do it, or
we're
whatever.
approaching episode 7, so my assumption is if they're gonna green light it, we'll know in the next couple weeks. Usually that's how HBO. They'll usually they'll tell you before the end. So yeah.
Well, they did it with Watchmen, because I think they were talking about perhaps doing more, and then they just decided not to, which to me made it more impactful, which doesn't mean that this can't do the same thing. But I think the way that this story is set up, it's a lot easier to do multiple seasons as
Well,
opposed
remember,
to what Watchmen was.
Perry Mason wasn't necessarily going to happen. It wasn't until they, late they decided that it was going to be a second season.
Well, like I said too, with that, if they just left out probably 3 minutes, it could have just ended, and I would have been
Yeah,
happy.
I agree.
So
The way it was written was
yeah,
it could go either way. Yeah, I completely agree that it was written that way. I think this particular show is designed in a way that easily you could do multiple seasons.
But yeah, you could have closed seasons.
But you could, yeah, you could even go as far as to do a jump ahead with a whole new set of characters, like
that's what I'm
because
saying.
set in this world. I mean, I think they would have that option. What they're going to do, who knows? But I'm hoping it's successful enough to where it does have a future.
Me also.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
I think that
I don't know why the way you worded that made me think of like American Idol or something. I was
What?
gonna start quoting like Randy Jackson for some reason, but like, nah, that's all for me, dog. I don't know why. But
Right.
shit.
American Idol.
Which
What?
also made me think of Step Brothers, because when he had the katana signed by Randy Jackson, my brain spiraled real
Yeah,
quick.
that's a wild journey right now, and you're
Big
going
leap.
on. So yeah, we enjoyed the episode. We hope you enjoyed this review. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't. Please leave a comment. We love the conversation. This episode, more than probably most, have definitely has potential for conversations. Like I said, if there's anything we were wrong about, or in terms of the Fox stuff,
Lore.
let us know if you know. Yeah, we're doing Raised by Wolves, The Boys review for the most recent episodes up. A lot of content coming in October, and yeah, thank you. See you next
Bye.
time.
Excellent.
Bye.